Hello, Garland Nixon here, and there's been some movement. Very interesting stuff. The Saudis and OPEC are making it clear who they side with, and the forces of Dark Brandon are angry. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here, and plenty to talk about as always. And now, actually, believe it or not, I'm looking for an article as we start that basically, in a nutshell, let me sum it up so I don't have to look for the article. Um, I know you guys trust me, right? You trust me that I'm not making it all up. So what's happened? The OPEC plus one, which is the oil producing cartel, which now the plus one is Russia, have met and they have decided to cut production. They have decided they're going to decrease production, which will, of course, raise prices. You know, one of the things that Garland Nixon is big on talking about is timing. What happened? When did it happen? What's going on around there right now? Okay, so what's happened? And of course, if you read the what do you call it? The title of this particular segment. You know, I'm talking about the forces of Dark Brandon being furious, being angry, and now all of a sudden they're going to rebrand these people. I'm suspecting as authoritarian dictators, right? It's authority, the authoritarian versus democracy, and the definition of authoritarian means you don't go along with the dictates of the U.S. empire. The definition of democracy means you do go along with the dictates of the U.S. empire. Well, since the OPEC leaders are now no longer going along with the dictates of the U.S. empire, guess what that makes them? Under that particular definition standard, they are authoritarian right now. Certainly, their method of government, most of them, is some level of feudalism. They've got a king, they've got an emir, they've got a royal family, whatever the case may be. But the U.S. had no problem, none of which are elected. And keep in mind something. My position is I believe in independence and sovereignty. If that's the way you run your country, it ain't none of my damn business, right? And let's not forget, a lot of these countries, such as Saudi Arabia, the House of Saud, they are clearly monarchies. They're clearly dictatorships, feudal dictatorships, but a lot of them were set up by the British and the U.S. So, I mean, what are you going to say? You set up a monarchy and then all of a sudden they're authoritarian. That's the nature of monarchies, right? So the bottom line is the U.S. empire is about to scream. They're a bunch of dictators, authoritarian monarchs, and which means they must be overthrown. Color revolutions, my God, protests all over Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE, you name it. I'm suspecting that the color revolution will start any moment where the people of those countries will stand up and say, we want a new leader that'll go along with whatever Joe Biden wants. I'm sure that's what the people in those countries are saying. Why, look how well it's worked out for the EU. We want some of that. So, but let's look at what happened. So, and put this all in context. A week or so ago, because I like to look at what happened just prior to this. Week or two ago, one of the things that I thought was interesting, remarkable, as a doctor would write on his slip, remarkable, right? One of the things that I thought was remarkable, worthy of a remark, is that the Russians put together a prisoner exchange deal that was unpopular in Russia. And people were pissed. They're like, these are Azov friggin' guys, and you're doing a prisoner exchange deal, and you're getting rid of and you're letting some of the Azov guys. That's not going to work out well. That's terrible. It's a horrible mistake. And at the time, I thought, the Russians aren't stupid. I don't see them doing some stupid, horrible mistake, right? So what's really there? Well, okay, let's look at the players. Saudi Arabia was involved. Mohammed bin Salman was involved, right? And I feel like the Russians were giving this guy some props, right? What they were saying is, MBS, you want it done? Yeah, we'll handle it, bro. We're good. You need, MBS. It gave him an opportunity just before he became prime minister to demonstrate he had some international clout, to say, look at this, Russia's a superpower. I went to him. I said, make this deal. Russians made the deal. And then right in there is when Mohammed bin Salman declared himself the prime minister of Saudi Arabia, which is interesting. And again, I think with him, in a way, not for or against Saudi Arabia. I think it was kind of a smart thing. He's going to declare himself the prime minister, which implies some level of democracy, even though it doesn't exist. So it was a PR move to declare himself the prime minister, but it was a diplomatic move and a little risky for the Russians. I wouldn't even say risky, something different. They knew they were going to get some elbows, right, from home. They knew they were going to let some Azov Nazis out, and the people at home were going to go, this is ridiculous, and they were going to get pushback from a lot of people. But at the time, I said, let's keep an eye on what happens. They did it with the Saudis. I think they did the Saudis a one-up. I think they did the Saudis a favor, did the Saudis a deal, and as a result, something's coming back. It was, we're all in this together. Also, let's not forget, at the very beginning of this conflict, the Saudis made it clear, hey, Russia is part of OPEC +1. We're supporting the OPEC. That was their way of saying to the U.S., we're with Russia, not with you scumbags. And if you remember, Joe Biden's calling the Saudis and they ain't answering the phone. They don't like Joe Biden. Remember, Joe Biden started off by saying they'll be held responsible for Khashoggi and all this kinds of stuff. Now, Americans who have been trained to be imperialist, who have been trained that somehow they have a right to go around the world and be the world's judge, jury, policeman, all of that kind of stuff. All of these Americans were like, especially the liberals, Joe Biden and really the two brainwashed cults, the blue and the red cult, were screaming out, Joe Biden, you must do something to hold Saudi Arabia responsible, and even some of the so-called progressives, you must hold Saudi Arabia responsible. And my position was, what the hell right do we have as the international world's police court or whatever to hold Saudi Arabia responsible for anything? It's not our job. We're not the reality police. There are avenues to address that. If the United States has a problem with something the Saudis did, go to the UN. Go to the Security Council, go to the Human Rights Council, go to the International Court of, the ICC, the International Criminal Court. Go do something. They're international bodies, but to arbitrarily and individually say the United States has to hold country X available, again, Americans all over, even those who don't even realize it, have been brainwashed into thinking that they are some kind of imperialism, right? All right, so let's keep moving. Let's keep going. So early in the game, the Saudis made it clear, we're with Russia, not with you. We're working together. So what's happened recently? One of the things that happened recently was the U.S. attacked. Let's not fool around with this. The U.S. attacked the energy infrastructure of the EU. I said then, one of my things I thought then was, the people, the countries who produce energy can't be happy about that. They got to be real concerned. They don't want that standard set. They don't want countries to now say, okay, when I'm mad at country X, I'm going to blow their pipeline. When I'm mad at country Y, I'm going to blow their pipeline. The first thing we're going to do is blow this guy's pipeline. Now they can't get their oil around through pipelines. It really disrupts their ability to make a living, and they ain't going to be happy about that. I know. I will guarantee you. Well, first of all, if I were the leader of an energy producing company, and I seen people, and I viewed a country, the U.S. empire, start attacking energy infrastructure of the major countries, I would not be happy with that. So we go on, moving on that makes it clear that there's going to be some animus between the energy producing countries and the U.S. Next, we move forward. What else happened? The U.S. and their colonies in Europe decided we're going to do some kind of, these people are so dumb. We're going to do a price cap on oil, Russian oil, blah, blah, blah. Now, here's a problem with that. Again, if you're an oil producing country, the U.S. is now saying we will control the price of oil worldwide. We're going to take control. We are the ones who decide what people pay for oil, and we're now going to disrupt the we've disrupted the supply chain. We've disrupted all this other bullshit for our neocon project in Ukraine, for our belief that we can somehow rule the world, and starting with Russia and China, we got to get them out of the way, right? Everybody knows what's happening. The people that have any understanding other than the brainwashed cult members, right? So the oil producing countries looked at it and said, wait a minute, we're the ones producing the oil. We're the ones producing the energy. And you guys are saying you're going to control the prices. That's not going to work out well for us in the long run, because we control the oil. We should control the prices. And you're now going to take that from us. That ain't happening. You're getting a brush back now. So I think the two particular things that precipitated this particular move, number one, the attack on oil infrastructure. I don't think the OPEC countries are happy about that at all. I mean, let's face it, is that hard to figure out? Secondly, and that is the eighth sanction package, where now they're saying we're going to cut, and they're saying we're going to oil tankers, we're going to sanction ships, we're going to do this. In other words, they're going to dramatically disrupt the oil the energy market worldwide. Well, we already know what that's going to do. The bottom line is, the truth of the matter is this: every one of these things that they've done has driven, every action that they've taken has driven up the prices of the commodity that they go after. We'll go after Russia for this, the price of grain goes up. Oh, we'll sanction Russia, the price of manganese and titanium and aluminum, all these things that Russia's producing, the price goes through the roof. So from one perspective, OPEC could have sat still, let these morons do this, and it would have driven the price up and they'd have made more money. However, there's the problem with that would be they would be allowing the US and the EU to take control of the prices for the oil market, and they're not going to do that. There are other ways to drive the prices up, such as cut down on your output. So what they're doing is twofold. Number one, you're attacking energy structure. Number two, you're trying to take control of the oil market. Those two things ain't going to happen. We will now show you that we control the oil market. We will also show you, I'm saying what OPEC says, that when it comes to Russia versus you, we're siding with Russia, not you. We will openly do that. Now, the Biden administration is screaming and yelling. The OPEC is clearly, let me see if I can find one. Biden, that OPEC is clearly siding with the Russians. And I'm like, duh, you think, buddy? You think they're let me see, where are we? Here we go. Let's look at this one. And this is not an accident, my dear friends. This is not an accident. Present screen. Here's what we're going to do. Look at this. Biden faces gas price nightmare as OPEC agrees to Russian oil cut proposal. So what do you got there? Who's going to be happy? The Russians are going to be happy. Hey, guys, can you cut oil prices? OPEC, not a problem. We got you, bruh. And Biden, holy shit, just before the midterms. I wonder, just throwing that out there, we're like a month before the midterms. Could that have anything to do with it? So what are they doing? A couple of things. They're doing a couple of things here to dart Brandon. Number one, they're sending the message, you bastards, we control oil prices. I don't know who you think you are, but you're about to find out the hard way. When you push against our oil prices, we'll teach you a lesson you won't soon forget. Number two, here's this message too. Oh, you want to blow up pipelines, do you? Well, there ain't going to be nothing in your pipelines. If you're going to threaten our ability to make a living selling oil, then you're going to pay a dear price for it. We're going to remind you who's in charge here. Number one. Also, let me add this. Doesn't it also show Russia? They're going to isolate Russia. How's that working? Russia has now demonstrated we have a stranglehold on prices, not because OPEC listens to us when we demand. Remember, you got two things. You got the Biden administration saying to OPEC, we demand that you do X or Y, right? And OPEC's like, yeah, right, but that ain't happening. Wherein the Russians are diplomatically saying, hey man, can you do us a favor, bruh? OPEC's like, what's up? Russia's like, look, these people are screwing with us. They're screwing with you. They're screwing with all of us. We need to cut back on this oil a little bit, raise the prices up, and jack these fools up a little bit. And OPEC's like, Thumbs up on that when they're getting on my damn nerves too. I say we kick them right straight in the nuts, which is exactly wham, ow, that hurts. Right in the bazongas. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and allied oil producing nations have backed a plan to dramatically slash oil supplies in a bitter blow to President Biden. Think about that, what I'm saying. It's not just that they're taking this action. Timing. Garland always talks about timing. Timing tells you so much. Right after Joe Biden, the forces of Dark Brandon attack oil infrastructure, attack energy infrastructure, right? Right after the forces of Dark Brandon um, uh, um, do this price cut, oil price cap thing. So they're saying we're going to control oil prices, right? And just before the midterms, I mean, they reared back and they kicked this guy in the nuts so hard that his eyes are bugging out. His tongue's hanging out. He's screaming at the top of his lungs because they let him have it this time. Maybe it was a knee, right to the groin, right? And Joe Biden's like, scrunched over, bending over with his eyes bugged out because he got kicked in the groin by OPEC. But but the big kick, I think, the big damage here is not what's going on here. Yes, there's damage to the Biden to the forces of Dark Brandon. There's damage in they're going to be paying more for fuel, and the message is clear. You ain't in charge, buddy. There's a messages in Europe is going to get it even worse because now the price of gas is going to go up, which is going to affect Biden's ability to hold together his very loose and getting looser coalition. Right? There's all that stuff going on. Okay, all that crap. There's how it's going to affect the midterms. Because I mean, if this happens here within the next week or two, just before the midterms, boom, the oil prices are going to go through the and I thought this for a while. I really thought this for a while. I should have said it because I'd have looked like I knew what the hell I was talking about when I don't. But for a while, I've been thinking to myself, if I was Russia, I'm in charge of Russia, and you're doing all of this stuff, I'm going to say, Dark Brandon, yeah, you wait till we get just before the midterms. That's when I'm playing my hand. The last thing you need just before the midterms is a reduction in oil and to make the oil prices go through the damn roof. And if I'm Russia and I'm because you got to play to get weapons you're dealt, whatever weapon you got. When you teach martial martial arts and self-defense, this is what they teach you, various weapons, right? This is my ridge hand, boom, that's a weapon. A chop, that's a weapon. You know what I mean? Oh, ridge hand's this way, boom. Chop is this way. That's these are all weapons. And if somebody attacks you, what weapons can you use? You know what I mean? What your kicks, your everything, your elbow strikes. Those are all weapons. These are all weapons. So if you are involved in a conflict, everything that you have is a weapon. If there's something laying there, can I pick it up and bang you over the head with it? You know what I mean? Whatever the case may be, everything's a weapon. So what weapons do I have at my disposal if I'm against the forces of Dark Brandon? And one of them is oil prices. But it's about timing. When do I strike you with that weapon? For instance, if you're in a fight, if it's possible, breathing is an issue, right? If a person's breathing, breathe. But if you catch them and there's a freeze just before you breathe again, bam, I hit you right during that when you freeze. I hit you right when you haven't breathed. If I can give you a good hard strike, maybe to the solar plexus, strike to the body, between that breath, it interrupts your breathing. And then that gives me some other, that's going to make it worse for you. So it's about everything. It's about when you using your weapons, when you use your weapons, when you strike your opponent, things like that, right? Those can be advantages. Now, the bottom line is if somebody attacks you, you just strike them as much as you can. But if you see, people get tired of, and they're breathing like that. Now you're seeing that breath. And just before they breathe, pow, you can get a good strike to the chest. And you interrupt their breathing pattern and you throw them off and things like that. So those are all things in the strike is a lot more devastating, right? Okay, these are things I'm thinking about. So when you strike your opponent is of great consequence. So if I was going to lower the prices of the Russians, if I were going to raise the prices to the roof, why would I want to do it in June? No, I wouldn't. Why? Because it's the middle of the summer. People will do what they're going to do, but they're right. When do I want to do it? And what's the worst possible time I could jack the prices up if I'm the Russians? 3 weeks before the election. They're going to cut it down, right? So what's today? The 5th, 6th? So by midweek next week, if they cut this thing down, let's see, when is it? Listen to this. A final decision. So, an OPEC Plus meeting in Vienna, the cartel's joint ministerial monitoring group recommended oil output be cut by 2 million barrels today, a day, or about 2% of the global supply. A final decision will be taken at the OPEC Plus ministers meeting later today. That's October 5th. If confirmed, this would be the deepest cut in oil production since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Ahead of the meeting, listen to this. It was reported both Saudi Arabia and Russia were expected to push for reductions of 1 to 2 million barrels a day. So the other week, when we were talking about letting the Azov people out, I think I might have talked about that on McCurris's show. I believe I talked about that on the Durant. But when we were talking about the Saudis, and people were pissed. Well, they let some of these Azov people. Why the Russians make this deal with the Saudis? Let me read this sentence again. It was reported that both Saudi Arabia and Russia were expected to push for reductions of 1 to 2 million barrels today. So think about it. That's how it works in international politics. That's geopolitics, right? Russia says, Saudi says, look, we'd like to work with you to get these people out and make this deal. And the Russians are like, that ain't a good deal for us. And the Saudis like, look, you wash my back, I'll wash yours, right? Good. Hey, I know you want to get rid of what raise the oil prices, plus these dark brand and these jackasses are getting on my nerves too. Why don't you go ahead, let these Nazis out? Thanks a lot. We're square on that. And then, and for whatever reason, I guarantee you this: the Saudis have made a deal with somebody else of something else they'll get if they'll get those Nazis out. Somebody, right? So the Saudis got their deal; they got the Nazis out. The Russians got their deal, and they're like, "Look, tell you what, man, how about 2 million barrels a day?" And the Saudis are like, "I got you, bro. It's all good, man." Right? So now the Saudis and the Russians are going to go in. Now think about OPEC. This is the big horsepower, man. The Saudis are the big OPEC. Nobody has the horsepower of the Saudis, right? And the Russians, that's the superpower. And the OPEC people have all made it clear. Did you see those videos when Lavrov went to the Gulf states or whatever, the organization of the Gulf states or whatever? You'd have thought he was friggin' Elvis or Michael Jackson walking in there, hugging him. Hey, bro, what's happening? They're high fiving, they're fist bumping. They love Lavrov, right? So, bottom line is this. Now, the plot thickens. 3 weeks. So I would imagine today's the okay. So that was the 5th. Okay, so they've done it. Apparently today's the 6th. So apparently they've done it. I ain't even read the newspaper. I already know what happens. I'm not even looking online. I guarantee you, when the Saudis and Russians came in and said we want to do it, it's done. And of course, I read where Karine Saint Jean Pierre, whatever the hell her name is, and the forces of Dark Brandon are flipping out. Oh my God, the Saudis are siding with the Ruskies. Yeah, in fact they are. It's a new game going on. So think about this. The Russians are starting to play their hands, and it's brilliant. This is actually brilliant, because the other part of it is this: don't separate things. Let's put a bunch of things together, right? The Russians are gearing up for a major military defense, whatever you want, attack, defense of their whatever, right? So there's some military stuff going on. So they're gearing up for that, number one. And we're saying that's going to take maybe a month or two before they get completely their feet set, and there may be some bombing or whatever, but okay, they're bringing in their troops, they're getting ready for that. You got that going on. You've got, at the same time, the forces of Dark Brandon are about to face the midterms, right? At the same time, it's starting to get cold. They literally, there's pictures of kids in Eastern Europe in school with blankets because they got to cut the energy down. They got to cut the energy down. Yeah, well, it's going to get a whole hell of a lot colder. Them blankets ain't going to get it done, brother. They're going to have to need them at home too. So you got those things together. Dark Brandon's about to face midterm elections. The Russians are putting together their A team, I guess, to go to battle with the Ukrainians. The EU is in the midst of unthinkable, dystopian hellscape. From not having food and energy, and the Europeans are like this: if we make it through the winter, and I'm like, time out. If you make it through the winter, well, if we make it through the winter, then we'll do this. If you make it through the winter, and if you don't make it through the winter, what happens? Tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of deaths. Frozen people, people in hospitals who can't get, people in care homes. What are you going to do? Old people who in care homes who got to have oxygen and all. They can't afford to be cold. Here you got some poor bastard who's got, every disease known to man, and he's in a care home being taken care of some people, and you don't have electricity, and you don't have heat and things of that nature, like several hours a day, no electricity. They're dead. They ain't going to make it. They got one foot in the grave and the other on a patch of ice as it is. They're out of here. They're done. So basically, you're culling out the weak and the sick out of the EU. To some extent, one could argue that COVID took out a lot of sick people. It was terrible. It's a horrible thing. I think it's horrible, especially now that Jeffrey Sachs has said he thinks it came out of a U.S. biolab. But bottom line is a lot of sick and older people and things of that nature died over the last couple of years because of COVID. How you think if COVID took a lot of them out, how you think having no electricity and heat's going to do, and very scarce on food? So again, timing. EU is done. Toast history. Stick a fork in there. Turn them, as we say in cooking, turn them over and stick a fork in their breast. They're done. Right. So all of these things come together. So Russia's playing, I think, a brilliant game of timing. You got a midterm election. The EU's going to hell in the winter time, and I'm putting together my team to go launch a drastic military assault on the Ukrainians. All of those things together now means that this is the time. It wouldn't surprise me. You got a number of things. If the discussion of a dramatic decrease in oil output, which, I mean, I haven't said it, but I suspect everybody knows. Subsequently, a dramatic decrease in oil output means a dramatic increase in oil price, right? Scarcity. You create scarcity, that creates a price. Everybody wants something. There's not as much of it as you need, as you would like. Guess what? You have to pay more for it. That's the way things work, right? Just the nature of the commodity trading, right? And the speculators. Now these oil speculators are going to freak out and lose their mind, which means I wonder what's going to happen. What the hell is going to happen to the derivatives market? Things of that nature, right? It's going to affect the financial markets dramatically. All these kinds of things are going to be dramatically affected, right? Again, also means the U.S. can't go to war with Iran, because if all this happens, then Iran closes the Straits of Hormuz, and Saudi Arabia can't even, and Qatar and all of these can't. The UAE, if the Straits of Hormuz closes down, none of them, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, none of them can get anything out of the out. So, that's that again, that the Iranian issue becomes important. It's all connected. But now, it's like, okay, we're going to go after Russia this way. We're going to go after Russia that way. We're going to go after them economically. We're going to go after their oil, their gas, their this, their that, right? But remember something. It's like, I put it to you, look, it's like this. Some team, you're the fan of a football team in American football, right? A football team. You got the offense and the defense, and your offense can't score. They can't score. They can't score. And you only talk about the offense. Oh man, our guys are stupid. Don't forget, they pay the guys on the other side of the field pretty good too. So the defensive players are paid well. It may not be that your offense is not great. It may be that the defense on the other side is great, and they're able to stop a great offense, right? So remember, they pay the guys on the other side of the field. So the forces of Dark Brandon, who are like, we're going to get the Russians this way and that way. We're going to punch them this way. We're going to hit them over here. We're going to come in this direction, punch them over here. That's right. We're over here. Now we're here. Now we're here. We're going to hit them and they can't get us, right? That's the forces of Dark Brandon, right? But on the other side, it's the Russians and the Chinese, because the Chinese got the Russians back 1,000,000%. Now, one might argue that China is a great industrial power, so they're going to suffer. Oh my God, they're going to suffer more than anybody. They use so much oil. Not so fast. Where did they get the oil from? Straight out of Russia. And what does Russia do? Knock like 30% price off of it. Right now, India and China are getting oil from Russia at a massive discount, right? So guess what Russia's doing? We're going to raise the price of oil through the roof. And then they go to Russian, but before they do that, they go to China and India. Hey, dudes, yeah, we got you. We got you. So what Russia has the capability to do, because their massive domination of the commodity industry, is jack up the prices of commodities for the West And then their boys, since they're the ones with the commodity, their boys, India, China, etc., they can say, don't worry about it, dude. You ain't paying that. That's for these folks over here. That's for these idiots. The idiots pay what idiots, you know what I mean? Idiots pay what idiots got to pay. They want to be act stupid. They want to, they want to come after us. That's okay. They get to pay the idiot's price for oil. You get the discounted price. Gas too, discounted. So India, China, not only that, add this. Let me keep adding things on it. Because China gets the discounted price, because India and the friendly countries, as Russia calls them, gets the discounted price, their industries are operating at a greater profit margin, which means their industries can sell stuff cheaper. Meanwhile, the US, the Western people that are against these guys, guess what happens? They got to pay full price for oil. Their industries got to charge more. Guess what happens? India, Russia, China, the other industrial, India and China are major industrial powers, but other industrial powers that have decided to remain friends with Russia, these other industrial powers, guess what? Their industry can dominate over Western industry because they get much cheaper energy, right? So they're just, when you control the commodities market, you can hit them from every direction, turn them every which way but loose. So I think what we're looking at is a situation wherein the Russians have played a very, very smart hand. I would say this about the Russians. Considering their hand, in poker, there's two things. What kind of hand have you been dealt, right? And because the U.S. has all of this, history of imperialism, they got a lot of money, they got a lot of natural resources, they got size, they got a lot of power, so they got a lot of aces in their hands, right? The Russians have some twos and some one-eyed jacks, but they got a couple of big aces, right? And so what I would argue is this: the Russians don't have the hand of the US in a lot of ways, well, on their own. But when you add China to them, when you add India, when you add the entire global South, when you add their diplomatic relations to OPEC, etc., they got a powerful hand on there. So what they do is they don't have a powerful hand themselves. They got a good, strong hand. They got a powerful hand, but not as powerful as the USA. But they play their hand very well. And what they've done, I'm one of the things I've trained a lot of things. One of the things I was trained in, I went through this, what was it called? Advocacy Leadership Fellows program, right? And it teaches you how to run a nonprofit, and B, how to advocate for whatever the issue the nonprofit is, right? And one of the things they taught you, what's the first thing you want to do if you have a nonprofit or anything? Build coalitions. You want to multiply your power. You want to get coalitions. I'm for whatever, saving the friggin' whales. I don't know, whatever. Just make something up, right? Whatever it is, I'm for helping the homeless. Right? Well, I want to get other people who have other organizations to build a coalition, multiply my power. Now we can get it done, right? What the Russians have done is they've built coalitions and multiplied their international economic power, right? Multiplied it dramatically. So now the Russians are now pulling the strings. And one of the ways that they're doing it is the U.S. is building the coalition for them. The U.S. pissed off and threatened the Chinese. So when the Russians say, hey, Chinese, you in? Oh, you're damn straight we're in. I hate these bastards. Hey, the U.S. has threatened Khashoggi and, have been bombing the Middle East for God only knows what, pissed off the Muslim world. They're, do anything Israel wants. So when the Russians say, hey, Muslims, we've been pretty good friends with you guys. Yeah, these people are pissing us off. You in? We're down, bruh. I don't have to go to Africa in the middle in South America. The Russians, hey guys, you in? Are you kidding me? Do you know what these bastards been doing to us for the last century? The UK, you know what they've been doing to us? So Russia then builds this coalition so they can address a lot of issues. They can strike from over here, again, in martial arts, there's they follow, animals. What is something in the martial arts that is, a lot of these ancient martial artists would sit and they'd stare at animals and they'd watch how they fought, and then they would imitate it, right? Like a snake keeps everything in front of you. Strike, boom, right? Where the crane's over here, and it's awkward. It strikes from this angle, strikes from this angle, it strikes from different angles. There's the big boom, so it strikes from different angles, right? And in fighting or boxing, you can, you're fighting somebody, you can use those types of things. You can strike from different angles, things of that nature. It depends on how you want to do it, right? So my point is, what Russia seems to be employing now is they're striking their opponent from a number of different angles, their adversary from different angles. And the angle that they have chosen this time is the diplomatic angle, and of course, oil prices. Now, here's what's interesting, and I'll add this. The US plays this hand. The West plays this hand. Ha ha ha. We've got the media, right? So the information war, we're going to win. Okay, I agree. You got the information war, you got the media. That's your area of expertise. That's your area that you've been working for years on doing that kind of power. That's one area that you have. If we're fighting, right? I got a sword and I got a knife and you got a stick, a staff, or whatever, nunchucks, right? Nunchucks, whatever. I got a particular type of weapon. You got a particular type of weapon. So people look at the information war and the media and say, "Oh, they've got this humongous advantage." Now, no, they don't have. It's not an advantage. That's a weapon that they have that they can use against Russia. Now you look at Russia. Does Russia have any weapons in their hand? Well, one of them is diplomacy. They're good friends with China, one of the most powerful economies in the world. That is a weapon. Another one is OPEC. They're an oil producing country, but unlike the US, they're part of OPEC and they've built a coalition. They built a system of allies. And now one of the weapons that the Russians can play is oil prices. Let me ask you this. Is the information war, which is not even in the real world, which is all theoretical, we're trying to get people to believe this or that, is that a more powerful weapon than being able to control oil prices? If you had to take one, you're in a battle, right? You want a knife or a staff or nunchucks or what, right? And then you say to this, do you want to be able to control this information media crap in the West, where you got true believers anyway, you're preaching to the choir, and there's still alternative media sources such as this one that are going to push back, right? That's one option. The other option is you can control world oil prices. I might just take world oil prices. So the whole information war, and I think people are giving that too much power and authority. It is one, if we think like self-defense, if we think like martial arts, that is a weapon, but is it the most powerful weapon? Add this. Also, with the weapon depends on whose hands it's in. You give somebody a sword that don't know how to use a sword, they'll cut their damn self with it, right? There was a Bruce Lee movie where this guy had these nunchucks and he just spun them and bopped himself in the head and fell. He didn't know how to use them, right? So the info war in the hands of idiots, in the hands of Dark Brandon, it ain't as valuable as it might be with some smarter people. The neocons are idiot ideologues. They don't know how to use it. They're authoritarians. All they knew is you better do what we have to. They use the information war. They use censorship. Right? We'll put the fist down on everybody who goes against us. So they're not even good with that. So for all who are saying the info war, why aren't the Russians using the info war? Why are they so bad at the info war? Well, that ain't their weapon. Theirs is diplomacy. Theirs is building coalitions. Theirs is building is aligning itself with OPEC +1 so they can control oil prices, control gas prices, control the prices of various commodities, wheat, this and that. They can decide who gets this, who doesn't get that. Screw that information war, man. Screw that information war. Give me the commodities. Give me China as an ally. Give me Africa and South America as an ally. If you weigh the weapons, they got a handful of weapons, and the U.S.'s weapons in this particular conflict as we go. I got to say, oil prices is a sledgehammer weapon, and particularly and that's the other thing. When do you use that weapon? Right? When's the best time to use that weapon against your adversary? So it's a matter of having the weapon, which is controlling oil prices, and not controlling oil prices. Russia's not controlling oil prices. They have cemented their relationship with the cartel that controls oil prices. So they can, and then what do? To really finalize that, they then go to the Saudis, and the Saudis say, we'd like you to do something that may not be a very appealing, let go of some Nazis. And Russia says, we really don't want to do that. We hate these bastards, but you want us to do it? We're friends. We all do each other's favors. Friends take care of friends. We got you. And to keep in mind, we're going to take some heat at home, but that's okay. We're willing to do that for our friends. Think about what that means. They were building their emotional relationship One of the things in Stephen Habit and Stephen what's his name? I forgot. Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. They were talking about the emotional bank account, right? When you have two people together, you can put things in your emotional bank account. Hey, I'm going to do you a favor, or you can make a withdrawal from the emotional bank account. Hey, I'm going to screw you over and steal your wallet, right? And what Stephen Covey talked about is if you take too much out, it's empty, game over. If you keep putting it in, your emotional bank account builds, and you build your relationship with whoever this person is, spouse, friend, whatever the case may be, right? What the Russians have been doing is they've been building their emotional bank account, a diplomatic bank account, with the an economic bank account with the Saudis and with these other countries, right? What did the Russians recently said? Hey, there's I forgot 90 million, billion, trillion pounds, whatever the hell, of wheat in Russian of fertilizer in EU ports. We want to give that to the poor countries for free. We want to give it away to the global south for free. What are they doing? They are building their emotional and diplomatic bank accounts with the global south. As the U.S. says to the global south, we'll overthrow your country and put in a dictator. The U.S. says, hey, how about some free fertilizer? Russia says, how about some free fertilizer? What's that going to do in the long run? The fertilizer is a great metaphor, because the fertilizer, they're planting something, they're growing something. That fertilizer now is going to grow their diplomatic relationship with these countries. And this is a long-term effect. But now what they're doing is they're applying the weapon of energy and economics at precisely the perfect time. So let's say the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th in there, $7 a gallon. Oh, dark Brandon's is grass in the first week of November. And the Democrats know it. The Democrats know it. The Democrats know all the things that I'm saying. Well, Dark Brandon, he don't know. He can't even find his way around the stage. But there are people that know it, right? People that are smart. The neocons are just like, oh, let's nuke somebody. You know, they're freaking complete maniacs. But there are people in Washington who are looking up saying, you know, that idiot over there, Garland Nixon, he's a Russian bot and we hate his guts. But he's right. They're having our ass with this international conflict when it comes to diplomacy. Russia is beating the shit out of them when it comes to diplomacy. And that's long term. See, when Russia says we're building a new order, we're building a new international order, China says we're building a new international order, that's long term. The first thing you have to do to build a new international order is to cement your relationships with the other countries, as many countries in the world. If you want an international order, if there's going to be more than one, right? Whoever has the most of the world in their international order wins. So if you've got all of Eurasia, with the exception of South Korea and Japan, which are about to be broke soon if they don't, if they keep listening to the U.S. empire, you got Eurasia, you got all of Latin America, the Caribbean, you got the oil-producing countries, OPEC, you've got Africa. You win. You win long term. You win. It ain't even close. It's game, set, and match. It's whitewash. It's skunk. 11-0. Game over. Right? So what we're looking at now is one of the first big howitzers that the Russians have fired. They've been building relationships with people. They've been building relationships like crazy, and now they're taking a big shot. They're saying, okay, we've been setting it up. You know, it's like boxers. You ever watch a boxing match? There are these big guys, right? And their hands are up, right? And they're feeling out there, and they're throwing this, and they're throwing this punch, and they're throwing this punch while they're setting you up. Because this guy's got a right, and he wants to set you up. He wants you to do everything, and then he sees an opening, and that's his big punch he knocks you out with, right? So they're set up, skirmishes. He wants to draw you in. He's going to do all kinds of things because he wants the opportunity to boom, hit you with that big right and knock you out, right? That's his favorite punch. And that's his money punch, right, as a boxer. Well, I think we just saw the Russians deal the first of their money punches, right? Now, if you're in the self-defense, and let's not forget, Putin's a black belt. Everything I'm saying is how he thinks. If you're involved in self-defense, it's becomes a way of thinking, so much so that martial arts self-defense, it's not just to fight, right? It is a philosophical view of reality. Okay. So if Putin's a black belt, he holds somewhat of that philosophical view of reality. He holds somewhat of that, right? So he's looking at that, thinking kind of some of the same things that I'm thinking. It's just natural if you're into self-defense or martial arts. So now they're throwing a big punch at just the right time. And they're hitting their adversary. What is it? In martial arts, you're big, you're tough, you're what? I don't want to punch you in the, I don't want to try to punch you. You're bigger, you're stronger than faster than I. If I hit you right in the chest muscle, or your stomach's hard as a rock, I punch you in the stomach, it ain't hurting you. What do I want to do? I want to strike the eyes. I want to strike the groin, the kneecap. I want to stomp the foot. I want to strike the solar plexus. I want to grab a little finger and snap that, right? I got to go for your weak points. You're a big, strong guy, and you're coming at me. I got to look for areas where I can do some really heavy damage in a hurry. Why? Because you can't build muscles on your eyes, your kneecaps, your shins, the inside of your ankles. There's all kind of places that I can strike, right? If I get on the ground, I can grab your ankle, boom, I can twist it and snap it easily. Doesn't take a lot of force. There's things that I can do, right? I got to utilize my strengths, and I got to go after your weakest areas, and I got to strike you and damage you in your weakest areas so you take so much pain that you want out of the fight. I don't care how big you are, right? I'm going to you grab Garland, and Garland gets that little finger. And I mean, gets that little finger right there. And, you practice with your wrist doing this. That's for getting those fingers, right? I get that finger and wham. I don't care how big and strong you are. When you look down and your little finger's facing in that direction, you're not going to be in a mood to fight much longer. You're twice my size. You're twice my strength. But your finger is facing, one finger's facing south and the other's facing north. You ain't going to be wanting to fight anymore. It'll throw you. To look at that will put a person literally in shock. And all I did was got that little finger. Boom. Why? Because I don't care how strong you are, you got weaknesses. Okay, here's my point. What did the karate experts, if this is a martial arts fight, what did they do? The weakness of the US, one of the big weaknesses politically, economically, a huge weakness is fuel prices. And mentally, people know you want to piss Americans off, you want to upset Americans, raise the price of fuel, they will go friggin' ape shit. Right? So and I'm going to hit you just the right time. So what I think the Russians are doing now is just before Dark Brandon goes in, and I'm going to do some more this time. Keep on this timeline. Just before Dark Brandon goes into, look, he's been releasing fuel, doing everything he can to keep the prices down artificially, just to make it through the midterms. And after that, they'll be out of fuel that they can release out of the strategic reserve. The prices will go up, but he don't give a shit, because at that point, they did whatever they did in the midterms. They held off as best they could. They know they're going to take a beating, but they did the best they could. But the one thing he wants to do is keep that down. So what do the Russians do? Number one, hit their ass with everything you got, which means I'm going to your weak spot and I'm going to snap that damn finger in 4 different ways, right? So now you are going into the midterms and they set you up to take a beating in the midterms. Why is that important? Let's continue with this time. Timing is important. Dark Brandon takes a beating in the midterms, right? It's now middle of November, and Dark Brandon and his party are laying on the mat. You've seen the old boxing match where they hit some guy and his mouthpiece flying out, and you see the guy laying on the mat, disoriented, reaching for his mouthpiece. That's where Dark Brandon and his forces will be after November. After they take a whooping, there'll be people in the party looking at them saying, you got to be shitting me. What you're doing ain't working. There'll be people in the party saying, we got to, what happens when he takes a whomping and they do some polls about Ukraine and they find out that's part of it. They do polls about gas prices, this and that, blah, blah, blah. There are people in the Democratic Party who are going to be looking at Dark Brandon saying, dude, you got to do something different. Or between now, we got 2 years and you saw what happened. We don't exist anymore. We're about to get wiped out. Right. So Dark Brandon, now the American people are pissed at him. How come the prices are so high, you asshole? His party's looking at Dark Brandon. You piece of crap. Look, you just got us wiped out. You're the worst president ever. Right. And meanwhile, he's weaker because now it has been revealed that the Russians got the upper hand when it comes to oil prices. So and the Europeans are going to be looking at him saying, "You bastard, you blew up our." They're going to have to deal with the reality that he blew up their pipelines, and it's cold as hell. So the Europeans are cold. Your party's pissed because they got wiped out. Your Congress is in a they're, what do you call it? They're going to be lame ducks because they lose, and they all go out of their seats in January when the Republicans come in. And when the Republicans come in, they're going to start some investigations on God only knows what, and that's going to be a pain in the ass. They're going to go after you. It's revenge time. Of course, it's done. That they're going to impeach your ass. That's a guarantee. So the bottom line is this: things ain't looking good for Dark Brandon, and some people in this party is going to say he's got to go. Bad as we beat, he's got to go. At that same exact time that all that's going down in November, the Russians are now going to have full horsepower set up for their military, what they would argue is defense of their territories. So at that point, gas is through the roof. The economy's gone to shit. Europeans' economy's gone to hell. Europeans cold as hell. The party's turning on. All these things are happening, and the Russians are going to be set to make their move. I'm just saying, timing in life is everything, my dear friends. Timing in life is everything. Thank you very much, everybody. Got to make a move here. It's after 10 o'clock, and so I got to get running and heading for the belly of the beast. That's right. I'm heading for K Street, 1600 something K Street Northwest, about 2 blocks from the White House. That's where my daily routine begins. And so that's what I'm going to be shortly getting on the train heading to DC. But thanks, everybody. Don't forget, look scrolling across, please. Patreon.com/Garland Nixon. If you can do $3, $5, $20, $1 million a month, whatever you can do is preferable. Is certainly a help. PayPal.com, garlandin@gmail.com for those who could PayPal me. Buy me a coffee. Now, you may think that PayPal is neoliberal bullcrap. If you think that's, and you don't want to do it, some people do think that and still do it. Buymeacoffee.com/GarlandNH. Don't know why the H is there, but they stuck it on there. So buymeacoffee.com is good. Maybe they did it, I don't know, just to piss me off. Maybe they thought my middle name was Henry or something. It's Ronald. But at any rate, and of course, lastly, and most importantly, rockfin.com, ROKFIN.com. Become a member of my Rockfin page. You got to, and certainly, they're going to throw my ass off YouTube if I keep talking like this at some point. Let's hope they don't. But rockfin.com, ROKFIN.com/Garland Nixon. It's free to become a member. No charge, and you can see all the stuff here, except the video and the sound is better. That's what I would say about Rockfin. I like it. Also, you can become a member. For those of you, a subscriber on Rockfin, it does give you the option on Rockfin for $9.99 per month. You can become a subscriber. That would be a great help for the channel. I certainly appreciate everybody and anybody who does that. I appreciate that, whatever you do. So rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. Make sure everybody here, we got 645 people. 645 people should smash the like button. 645 people should all be subscriber members. Free membership over at rockfin.com, and ideally, hopefully, if you can do the $9.99 a month, that would be a great big help to be subscribers. If you can't, just do it. Here's the deal on the premium, the $9.99 a month. Rockfin, every subscriber, every one of the creators does at least a premium show once a week, and you got to be the $9.99 a month allows you to see the premium, anybody's premium shows, not just mine. And there's a lot of great shows on Rockfin. That's another thing. If you ain't on Rockfin, there's fantastic shows on there, a lot of good ones. I do one a week every Wednesday morning with Scott Ritter. We do an update Wednesday morning, and it's wonderful. And the $9.99 a month allows you to see my one premium show a week, which is with Scott Ritter, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Wednesdays. But you can see everybody else's premium stuff, and there's a lot of really, really good stuff there. So thanks a lot, everybody. I can't do the super chats right now because I got to run and catch a train, but I certainly thank everybody, and I will hit them. I'll be back on sometime later on tonight. I think this was a lot of fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed it too. Peace. I'm out.